This is the Astra CPG show. Live unfiltered every month. Industry experts across the aisle perspectives. 45 to 60 minutes of honest talk about what's happening in CPG sales, buying, brand building, and manufacturing. And here's what makes it different. You choose the charity. You choose the amount. Every dollar of your donation goes directly to the organization we support each month. This isn't a coaching call. This is a mission-driven learning event where CPG pros come together to learn, grow, and give back. Because when we strengthen the people in this industry, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially, we strengthen our communities too. Join the movement, join the conversation, and let's build a more generous, connected CPG world, one live stream at a time. Welcome to the Astra CPG show.
Chills, literal chills.
I feel like I'm going on Joe Rogan. Man,
It's great.
I'm like underdressed here.
Yeah, thank you for AI for that. Pretty fun playing around with that. But yeah, welcome guys. We're here at the Astra CPG show. This is episode 2 of doing this, where we do monthly charity calls. This month we're helping support the Exodus Road, really great organization helping with the trafficking of children mostly, but we really want to support. And if you're on the call, I appreciate you being here. And today's topic, we're going into what buyers actually do all day, and I think it's going to be a fun topic. We have representation from 3 different channels, which I think is very unique. We've got natural, conventional, and convenience here, so really excited to get into it. The intro said, it's just real conversation. So as we get going, I will get some introductions out there for Matt and Holly, and then we'll get into conversation. You can feel free to type in the chat any questions that you have. There will be something that I pull up here in just a second, and I'll show you all a little bit about what the buyer's world really is, and then we can take some suggestions on areas that you want us to cover as well. So, Matt, I'll kick it off to you. You're the first one on my screen. Why don't you give us an intro really quick on who you are and what you're doing now?
Yeah, appreciate it, Robert. Thanks for the invite. Excited to be here with you guys. Matt Caller, Senior Director, National Accounts, now at a brokerage firm called Proud Impact Collective, although I spent the last 20 years before that in multiple roles, from pushing carts up to category management between both Kroger and Albertson Safeway. So excited to be here, man.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Holly?
Yeah, excited to be here too, Robert. Thanks for the invite. Holly Pyzik. I've spent 16 years in the CPG industry, starting off on the sales side, being with Altria and Red Bull, and then had the opportunity to move over to the buyer side and work with Circle K as the head of packaged beverage for North America. Now I'm back on the selling side as VP of sales for Coaqua, which is a premium coconut water.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So we're going to just get into it. I have a really quick picture I want to share with you all, and let me pull it up. There we go. So I put this together for our community a while ago, and this is just a representation. Let me zoom in a little bit. It might be hard to see, but this is a quick visualization of what the buyer's world really entails. And to be honest, it's not even everything. It's just some big categories of work that we all do. And you can kind of take a look through here. There's different things that you would expect: category management and reviews and pricing, promos, things like that. Then you have some other areas that you might not expect, like private label, marketing, supporting stores, and things like that. So I kind of wanted to use this as a starting point. To be honest, Matt and Holly and I, we talked last week, and we thought merchandising would be a great place to start, because through the 3 different channels, there's going to be different expectations, and it might be a good good opportunity to see behind the scenes in each one of those areas of like how it works, what the process is like, and all of that. So I'll kick us off there. If you are live and you want to cover a specific topic, go ahead and throw it into the chat and we'll try to move into that segment next. But let's start here and I'll stop sharing my screen. So, guys, merchandising, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think a good place to start would maybe be for me, I'm just very curious of what the process is for, both conventional and convenience. There's different space that you have, and you guys were both at national level.
Yep.
So what does that really look like for planning your merchandising space? When you have different size stores and different regions that you're working for, like what does that really mean for you as you're planning your merchandising grid for the month?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So with Circle K, I oversaw both countries, US and Canada, and then Circle K has 14 other divisions that operate semi-autonomously in their network as well. So worked with all of the category managers from across the country. So when I was making decisions from a merchandising perspective for convenience, knowing that this decision that I made had to roll out to 14 other people and it had to be nationally relevant for all of them as well. So when things and ideas were brought to me, it was really what's the best of the best ideas that we can implement? And knowing that there's a variety of different store sizes from kiosk locations to larger NTI stores as well, the plan had to make sense too, because there's just not as much square footage as a traditional grocery store or a natural store, right? So when I was looking at the plan every month, it was, hey, what are the 2 to 3 biggest opportunities that I think could drive the needle across the entire country and really generate results for all of our business units, whether that's an exclusive product, a great innovation launch from one of the biggest vendors. It was really prioritized to make sure that we're making that square footage as productive as possible. And then layering on promotions that were relevant and that would make sense for the entire network as well.
Yeah, that's uh, that makes really a lot of sense. And I think really quick, so you covered beverage, right? So when you say you have to have like one or two priorities, was it structured like beverage gets this amount of space or snacks get, like is it really just month by month you kind of play around and work with each other internally?
So nationally at Circle K, there was a head of center store, a head of ALK. And so we would all have to communicate together to say, hey, here's what our opportunities are and what should take priority. And, sometimes we all think that our priorities are the most important, of course,
I
right?
mean, yeah.
But having transparency across those 3 folks, because it's not just my 3 shippers, potentially it's, Hershey's or Mars that are coming out with their seasonal items. So making sure that it all fit, because at times when we were new into the structure, there were 12 shippers out in stores, and that's quite
Mm,
honestly not feasible for the stores. So we would go in and say, what is the revenue that this shipper, this program can generate? And then what should be the ranking? So I would rank my same with center store and then try to collaborate with the business unit because this is going out to an entire network of people that are going to see this and have to pick for themselves, and then down to store operations where they're dealing with all of these shippers and programs coming into stores to make it very clear to them of what are the most important things in stores too.
yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Matt, what about you with, I mean, again, maybe there's some variance in store size, but typically they're all a pretty good size. What was the average square foot building? Do you know?
Gosh, I don't, because it really, honestly, it did vary
Yeah.
by division.
Yeah.
So, like, I think in Northern California had just kind of smaller stores, but they did a ton of volume.
Oh,
And then
okay.
you go all the way out to Chicago to like a Jewel Osco, and they're huge, right? You can go and almost land an
Mhm.
airplane in there. So, structure wise, on the national side was very similar to Holly. I had the benefit before going to national of being in the division, so I got to layer it on both sides of it. So we would do the same thing, right? Our priority was always number one, but it had to make a lot of sense along with it too. And so how we would do is we had each one of our divisions had a representative. So funny enough, I was also in beverage and some other categories too. So we would meet with our pod, right? And so we would go through and deliver the same thing. Here's a big launch that's coming. Here's a big event that's coming, right? I think of this next year, right? FIFA and, America 250, right? Are probably two big events that are going to be going on, probably especially in convenience and in conventional. And so we would layer and say, hey, here's our players. This is what they're coming out with. This is their sponsorship that goes along with it. This is where we feel like you should really lean in. I think the benefit that we had on the conventional side is, to Holly's point, right? Like 12 shippers in a convenience store is a lot. In some of the smaller stores, it would be too, but we could go and do like pallet drops too, right? So there was ability to go do things, even though it still looked crowded in some cases, but it's just, how the level of the business was. And so we would do the same thing. We'd say, hey, here's our priorities. And then they would go back to the division side and go, okay, I'm the beverage guy. I need this. Cool. What's the salty category need? Cool. What's the GMHBC category need? What's home, et cetera, et cetera. And then they would layer it down to the divisions too, or over to the district manager. So there's a lot that goes into it, right? It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
the nice part is the division still had the autonomy to do ad hoc things, right? So there was something that was going big in the Portland division, for example. They still could go do those things. It was, hey, here's a big national event. Here's the reason to believe in it, but also go be locally strong and do what makes sense for your divisions here, or whatever whatever you contracted or negotiated there too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think in like the first thing that came to mind when you guys started speaking about this and hearing it was, everything goes pretty smooth, right? Like your priority is always the most important. So you always got what you wanted, right?
Always. Of course. I got a big
I
voice,
wish.
Robert.
um, yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of hands in or cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot of people wanting their priorities. So I don't think that's different from anybody. There's even at regional level, we had a process. It's obviously a lot different, but same principles of, put in your request, then the leadership team would meet and, accept or approve what those items are. So totally makes sense. Kind of good to know that, we're all doing very similar things, even from a regional to a national level. Um, yeah, it doesn't always go smooth though. Like, did you guys have any moment that you could think of, like where it was like a big event that you had and it didn't get what you needed, or like you felt like a little slighted, like what, like the numbers don't make sense? Is there politics in there a little bit where you kind of have to, you know, you just don't always get what you want?
Yeah, there were definitely times where you had to fight for your category, 100%. And it was my job to go fight for our beverage category and for our beverage suppliers, to make sure that if they were bringing me an opportunity that I thought was differentiated, that drove traffic to the store, whether that's from a shipper or from a POS placement outside of the store, to make sure that they had that visibility. And what it comes down to too is the strategy that those categories play for the total enterprise, right? So beverage was a traffic driving category, whereas center store is more of a traditional pickup. It's a fill-in, it's a basket builder. It's not driving as much traffic. So it's taking it back to the facts and the role of what that category is doing and showing how the opportunity that Pepsi, Coke, Red Bull, whoever is bringing us is going to bring more folks inside the store, and this is the velocity that that sign or that display is going to generate for us as well. So it's all very fact based. Try to keep as much emotion out of it, right? But you do
Yeah.
and go to
Yeah.
bat for the vendors that bring you great programs.
Yeah, I back the data piece, and Robert, you probably always felt it too, right? Like your story and everything that makes a lot of sense is great, but having the data piece to go along with it and say, this is why, like Ollie, right? Absolutely, you want people coming in there but you also want them to build the basket to go along with it, right? And have the consumer engagement. So um, like when I ran beverage, it was beverage, and then I also had jams, jelly, spreads, and honey. There's not correlation, just so people know. But right, it was a traffic driving category, and then also like an everyday staple category. And so, for me, it was like, well, I need to push honey in the fall, right? And so here's honey shippers that make sense. People use it for health, people use it for tea, people use it for this. And then you like look and you're like, cool, we've got this big plan. And then it's like, oh, cool, here's more soda. And you're like, yeah, that's great that somebody came out with the 12th flavor of whatever, right? But it's like, this is what consumers are looking for. And so that's a big part of where it comes down to do. And at the end of the day, too, Robert, sometimes just comes down to space. And on the division side, too,
Yeah.
right? And Holly, I don't know if you guys saw it as much on the convenience side, but there are sometimes contracts and negotiations that are happening at the division level that we're not aware of. It just doesn't always
Mm.
trickle up. And so it's like, oh, that makes sense. You have to go do what you said to the vendor community that you would go do.
Yeah, 100%. I saw that too, especially with the BUs. I did uh
Wh- Sorry,
if
what's BU?
oh, business unit. Sorry, still
Okay,
talking in
cool.
Circle K vernacular.
Convenience language.
Convenience language. The business units had responsibilities for their own assortment within their local geographies, their own displays. So it was working alongside of those too. And if there was one that superseded what I thought that BU could do, it's worth having the conversation because at the end of the day, it should have been what's best for the enterprise too.
Yeah, I was curious about that. With I know I got it a lot. When you're planning, like doing a planning meeting with a vendor, and you get excited about helping grow in these programs, and whether that's a shipper or an end cap or some kind of side panel or wing or whatever. Um, we probably, we promise like, oh yeah, we'll get that. And it's never really truly like a promise. Like it lands when it lands. But sometimes, when you feel very good about something like, hey, this seems like a shoe and we'll go ahead and do this, but it doesn't get picked. Like, have you ever had you've probably had that pushback of brands, right? Like, hey, I thought we were doing this nationally, like this end cap or this side wing or whatever it is. I know I got that, so I just figured share with people like it's not uncommon, I don't think, but you guys tell me.
No, it's not uncommon, especially when I started ranking my priority for shippers and displays. And I'd say, okay, you're going to be priority two. Well, a brand came with an initiative that superseded it. You get bumped to three. And the brand, I can't believe it. I've been bumped to three. Or you get bumped out totally. But you also try to keep your word to them. Well, we can't do it right now, but let's look at a different period that we can do. Or what's the volume that that initiative or that shipper was going to generate for you? Let's see if we can work together instead of a shipper to do something to generate the same uptick in the volume because it doesn't always have to be a shipper. Inconvenience shippers are very common. They drive a lot of velocity, but there's other tactics that you can do outside of that that I'd encourage the vendors to work collaboratively with me on to generate the same volume that they were looking for from the shipper.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's same. I mean, same kind of protocol on a lot of those things. And I think the biggest thing too is right collectively, right, we all had our priorities for our department. We had our P&L to hit
Yeah.
for our department, but at the same time, it's going into the bigger pie of what, right? So we could say, hey, this is a priority, but maybe there's something that we have to cycle from the year before. And it's like, oh, I'm trying to push beverage, but Salty Snack had this big initiative last year. So they actually have to go and get, call it two shippers instead of one to make up for the cycle because they have to hit their numbers so we can hit our numbers so total store can hit theirs. And that's where a lot of it
Yeah.
probably comes into play too, where it's like, oh, we're super excited about it. And then you look at it and you go, oh, well, here's the actual real piece behind it. And I was right there with Holly too, especially at the division level where it's like, you are working with me, right? Or the business unit for Holly, right? You're working with me directly. This is how it is. It's impacting, our people, our stores, our priorities. So yeah, can we do stack out? Can we do a clip strip? Can we move it to a different period? Can I lean in right on my side because my word, right? Your word is all that you
Yeah.
got, right? You have to put your own head on your own pillow every night. So, how do you go through and work out? And so on the buyer side too, to go and tell it to that leadership team there, right? Hey, this is what happened. This is what I said. Can we pivot? Can I lean in here? And usually, right, you can come to some sort of agreement. But Robert, on the natural side, like how did you go through and make some of those adjustments? And you managed a lot of the refrigerated space too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty similar. I think the base understanding whenever I met with somebody, especially with displays specifically, we didn't have a traditional, 4-foot end cap display for refrigerated in every store. We had mobile refrigerated units, so it's like the bunkers that are on wheels, they can move around. Those were in every store, and we had up to 3 or 4, and that was the shared, you know, community display space that we had to kinda put our hat in for. Um, the end caps that we did have on our display grid, it was a little over half, maybe a little over half the stores that had space, so we still had it on our grid, and I would just set that kind of framework up front that it's not guaranteed. For me, I would push the items on ad on the end cap because we wanted to showcase value and get that volume and support for the volume too. So it was always part of the conversation. Um, Grocery did it a little bit differently. They had a certain allowance that they had to hit to be on that end cap. And a lot of people, when they came to me originally, said, "Well, can I give you a deeper discount to get on the end cap?" And it just doesn't guarantee you space. So I was very upfront with it. And then when we did have something where I said, like I committed to it, I was usually pretty good about like I can commit 100% to my space, but it's not fully committed if I can't get the MRU. So I definitely had people push back, and sometimes like I just messed up and I put it, maybe I didn't get it on the end cap the right way or the right set of items, and I would just own up to that and like try to make it up in some other way down the road. Stuff happens.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Stuff does happen and stuff comes up for buyers. And I think the sales reps that do the best, they don't take things personally too. It's not my
Yeah,
personal decision
totally.
against XYZ sales rep that I'm moving or shifting this priority. I'm doing what's best for the business, is coming back and being a collaborative partner to think through other things because as a buyer there's a ton of pressure, there's a ton of stress, there's a lot of things you're doing every day, so being that thinking partner to come up and say, okay, here's what else we can do instead of getting stuck in what happened. Um, I had some of the best working relationships with folks that work like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I noticed pretty early on, as I was learning, I made mistakes, obviously. And, I didn't have somebody with me by my hip every second in every meeting. And so, something would happen. And the newer, like in the same regard, the newer reps on the other side, they would take it personally or, like something would happen. I'm like, dude, like we'll make it right.
Right.
Just take take it down a little bit and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, shit happens. So, um, I think I I love all the merchandising conversation that we're getting a little deep into the conversation now. So I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit. And, I think there's this just kind of going back to that picture even, there's this idea that buyers are only looking at new items and doing category reviews or foraging. And obviously, that picture shows differently that I shared earlier. And, some of the other areas that come to mind, again, that may be different from channel to channel or business to business is like, how do you support stores? Are you directly communicating with them via email, a portal, some kind of platform that you have? Are you out in stores with expectations of being out there so often just to be able to walk and talk to the staff and things like that. Like, what did that look like from level?
Store support, I think, is one of the most important things that a buyer can do because it helps you know what's actually going on in store. So, the 12 shippers, it's too much, right? Because the store ops are going to tell you that. From a national perspective, I would go out and see stores and work with all of the different business units across the country and, go out and see the stores. But one of the things that Circle K does is the business unit category manager is incredibly ingrained with store ops. So a lot of the different service issues, anything like that, those go to the category managers. There's fantastic category managers at Circle K at the business unit level right now, that they were on top of those things all the time. They were out riding stores. They were seeing how resets were going. They know their distributors, incredibly ingrained. So my role was a little bit unique, being one level removed. Now, when there's a broad service issue with one of the big vendors that's impacting more than one business unit, we would go follow up to say, hey, what's going on here? Our stores aren't getting serviced, our fill rates are dropping, and look for other alternatives. But it was a little unique, but definitely a very important part of the role too.
Similar structure. I definitely spent a lot more time in the stores when I was at the division level because same thing, right? Like every plan that I made, I was to go ensure that execution was happening, even outside of right reviews and everything else that went along with it. There's plenty of times that I remember one of your pictures from, I think it was last Thanksgiving, Robert, being out in the store and throwing loads. Like, yeah, you're just
Yeah.
that much more connected to it because things do happen like that. On the national side, at least for the Albertsons piece, it was we would travel for test sets. So as we got prepared for sets, because we had so many different unique variables, like for instance, I was drawing probably 5 to 600 schematics for chill beverage just because there was
Ooh.
3-foot sets all the way to
Yeah.
78-foot sets. And so you try to get out to the divisions, talk to them there, connect with the division, managers that were there. And that way you can also talk through like what's really important to them. Hey, is it, it's not just, hey, does this fit on the shelf, right? Which is not really
Yeah.
what the reset is. It's also, hey, did I add in a new item and it ended up halfway across this thing because, right, you stick it in a machine and you hope that it comes out the right way. That's
Yeah.
where you would go through and do it. But then you'd also be like, oh, there seems to be a really important local brand that's missing from this. Or you asked
Yeah.
specifically for this. How do we go through and accommodate for it? Or maybe it's in, you know, larger set sizes instead of smaller set sizes. You can have that ability to do it. And then just going through and talking. And I would say it, like the store director is probably the most important person in every single store. Like they are timeless in what they do, because they have to touch every single piece and they trickle up and they trickle down probably more than anybody else, right? You've got corporate and divisional and
Yeah.
buyers and the community coming in, as well as all of your personnel that you're sitting there trying to manage at the same time too. So kudos to them, and especially in, I would say like smaller independents that also then are acting as the category manager and buyer and negotiating and everything else, right? You just kind of add in that extra layer to go along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And dude, you got me going now. Like my mind racing about schematics. So you guys mind a pivot?
Absolutely.
All right. 500 variations, right? Or like versions that you have. Like obviously I thought it was bad when I had to do 18 of something for 22 stores. There's only like a couple that match or are identical. Um, dude, that's what does that look like? Like how do you obviously have a support team. You're
Yep.
not doing all
Not doing, oh,
500.
no, no.
How many people do you have on your team that are helping with the schematics and do you just do the like a base set and then they do more of the variation? Um, to shrink or expand?
Yes-ish, and I would say everybody does it a little bit different. Thankfully, technology has gotten better and better throughout the years. It's art and science, right? I mean, it's really what it comes down to. As Holly can probably agree on that one too. So how we would do it is we actually had like a dead store. It's here in Boise. It's called the Innovation Center. And so we would go and set two different schematics actually live. So I could see if the shelving fit, what made sense, items that were coming out, items that were going in. I had two table captains that I would
Mm.
have come join with me. And then we had like our schematics manager as well. And so by the,
Hold, hold on really
yeah,
quick. Table captains, for people that don't know.
yeah. So a table
Yeah.
captain is like an advisory committee essentially, and so in a lot of cases, they tend to be. And Holly, please, I would love your opinion on this too. They tend to be like larger CPG companies that come in because they have so much data that's out there. The benefit that I had for the team that we worked with is they also had convenience store data. So for me on the chill beverage set, I had to think very conventionally and then also needed to know what Holly and her team were doing in Circle K so I could go battle against it. And to be able to come together, right? And so you have to kind of think in those different layers. So the table captains would come in uh strictly in advisory roles, right? The best ones did not come in and push their agenda for their company.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yep.
they were being paid by them, but there was a reason that we let them into the innovation center and had the conversations with us. So that way, you're not making A, decisions in a funnel, and B, decisions on your own. And that way you can go through and spot check things against, like, hey, I want to try this. Cool. Let me run some data on it. Hey, it's been tried before. We're not really seeing the results on it. Maybe we don't try it yet. Cool. That's great. Like, data is great. Data is timeless. You can't run away from it. You can mitigate it and you can manage it and you can make it look however you need to. But it's timeless and it doesn't go away. And so we would go through and do that piece. We'd set what would be our like full variety standard size, or most common set size is probably more
Mhm.
accurate. Like my most common set size was 12 feet. I would get it based on how I needed to, and then we would plug it in. So every division essentially would have the same 12 foot. And then we'd go through and go, okay, in the East Coast, you need more of this brand, and the West Coast, you need more of this brand. But the 80% core is pretty much the same. And again, it's beverage, right? So it's Coke, it's Pepsi, it's
Yeah.
Red Bull, right? It's a lot less of that. But then it's, oh, West Coast, you're a little bit more natural leaning, or hey, you've got this contract going over here. And then we would plug in it. Because I had so much time as a buyer, right? Because as one does. But no, I would go through, we would plug it in, we talked about we're expanding lists, but then I would actually put my eyes on every single one and make my notes with my schematic team to say, hey, like this looks off, I need this here, we're missing this, and go through all the variations of. It was a lot.
Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. Holly, what about you?
Well, for Circle K, it's interesting. So when I joined Circle K, prior to me, there was no head of packaged beverage.
Mm.
It was all really run through the divisions. And so Circle K used a mathematical equation to determine manufacturer space within the cold vault. So when I stepped in, I didn't want to change everything all at once because it's impacting 14 people. And at the time, there are about 6,800 stores, and Circle K was a chain of acquisitions. So I can't even tell you all of the different footprints and the number of planograms that were out there because all of these stores, they were under different chains and they got
Right.
converted into the Circle K banner. So it was a team effort between me and the business units for me to set the strategy on here's how we're going to do space. Here's how we're going to look at it. And then the business units would sit down with their table captain, one of a handful of CPGs that offer up that service. Very thankful for them to go and draw the planogram. So what I would look at is what is core assortment that all of our stores should have, because one business unit might choose that they don't like electrolyte, for an example, but it's selling in Every other business unit has electrolyte except one, and it's selling in their ROM. And for whatever reason, they've chosen to not take it. Well, here are the core items that should be carried regardless of set size across our network. And they're the ones that make the most sense. It's not going to be a big red, which we know is mostly in Texas, right? It's Coke, it's Red Bull, all of those things, but making sure that we have all of those items available for our consumers that don't see boundaries that we've self-imposed of having different business units. And then laying out, here's what innovation space will look like. And I would take half of it and I'd give the other half to the business unit to be able to work through contract negotiations, to take in a brand that I think could do something really phenomenal for the entire enterprise by having it in all of our sets. And of course, working with our private label team, because private label is a huge initiative, to say what private label items should we have, how much space should they have, knowing that we want to continue to grow private label. So I would lay out a playbook of all of this information and then pass it down to our business units to add in their local assortment. So adding in the big reds, everything else that should be in their sets, given the regionality, taking in innovation, which was a great competitive advantage for them to be able to take in innovation in a smaller 300 to 600 store business unit. So I could see of all the innovation that they're taking in, what are the proven winners? And I'd encourage brands, it'd be a home run to get authorization at Circle K or 7-Eleven nationally, right? But if you could go test out, prove your velocities at those business units, and then ladder up too. And then they would go and work with their captains to go through the whole reset process while reporting back to me. So it's a time consuming process. It's
Yeah.
a stressful process because everybody wants more space every year, but the vault doesn't
Weird.
grow. Yeah, weird. But one of the things I thought about is, how do we make the vault more efficient? How do we make every individual facing more productive than it was the last year? And I know a lot of convenience store chains and grocery chains take slotting dollars, right? But slotting dollars should be considered, but also what are the turns of those items? You could pay $500 to get an item in, but if it's not going to move, I'd rather pick
Yeah.
an item that's going to pay $100 of slotting, but it's going to generate that much more. So that was one of the things I continue to work on is how do we improve that total efficiency of Vault too?
Yeah.
How much, ho- both for you, Holly and Robert, how much, as you went through and did that, did you say there was a brand that you fell in love with and you liked their story and their mission, and maybe they were new and emerging? And to your point, right? Like if you took out one facing of Coke, it's probably $1 million in sales, right? And so, not knowing in the back of your head, knowing the data's not going to line up, how often were you able to go through and try and push, or at least test it in one of the BUs?
It's certainly tough with contracts, right? To because nobody wants to lose space, and there's a lot of money on the table with those contracts. There were brands that I fell in love with that I saw from the velocity that they could do well if they expanded across other business units. Maybe not nationally, but would say, "Hey, they're doing really well in this segment of the country. This should be considered." And in some cases, the mathematical equation can, change that over from Coke to an emerging brand. And in some cases, it's taking it into innovation space. So it's challenging to reduce a Coke or Pepsi space. So you have to have the data that warrants it, though, too, especially when they're paying high slotting dollars.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I was curious, what's the balance for you guys on um, like capacity and days of supply, versus the variety that you have, especially different. I'm assuming a little bit different between conventional and natural and convenience. They're all going to have their own kind of mindset or practice in what they want to go to market with.
Do you want me to
And
take?
Yeah, you want to start?
So, so days of supply is tricky. So we set, I believe it was 14 days of supply for the top 20 items, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be
Okay.
wrong, right? To make sure that our top 20 items that contributed a vast number of our sales were always in stock, because we wanted those there for our consumers. And with a lot of DSD suppliers, they're only there one time a week.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say less store labor, right? It's not
yeah,
like the store staff's back there all the time stocking like in a grocery store.
yeah, you might have 1 or 2 people, but at the same time, that clerk is preparing food for the food program. They're checking people out. They're dealing with the fuel pumps. There's a lot of labor on those store clerks to make it as easy as possible for our high velocity items. And you have to, we would also look at 4 days of supply. We'd look at the summer months because isotonics is a
Sure.
prime
Yep.
example. If you looked at January and February and you were fine with days of supply, then, well, in the summer, you're going to be totally blown out as well within the cold vault. But I think that that also ladders up to case drops, shipper programs, all that stuff, where if
Yeah.
the days of supply is condensed, how can we also have this available at other points in the store too?
Yeah, for sure.
Y-
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, for us, at least in on that category, it was less on days of supply because we had so many different touch points. So, like for instance, a red bottle of Coke was in every one of my chilled sets, as well as probably every one of the check stand coolers as well. And I would say most of the stores had the benefit for DSD that they were coming in multiple times a week, if not every day. So on the flip side of it, though, when I did jams, jelly, spreads, because it was primarily through the warehouse, then
The
yes, we
warehouse.
definitely had to have the days of supplies. But at the same time, it was also pack out because the last thing that we wanted was product going back to the back of the store. So in some cases, you had to balance out and go, you can set a
Yeah.
parameter all day, right? But it's like if I have this many days of supply, I'm going to need 5 facings of this for pack out. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If I can get it back down
Yeah.
to here, and then you've got, KE specialty items that are coming in as well as the conventional space. So it's definitely not a hard and fast rule. I'd say every independent one tends to do it. And you also have to know how often your moves, your turns are. Holly's probably moving, almost every item every day in a lot of those high end categories. Peanut butter has like an 83-day
Yeah.
purchase cycle.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of your DSD touch
Yeah.
points though, Matt.
Yeah. I could
If I
I
was
could
still there,
sense
I'd
it.
be
I
calling
could
up
sense
Coke
it.
right now.
Yeah, you should. Absolutely. Go, wait a minute. Yeah.
Wait a second here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this balance between like labor efficiency and store operations and the days of supply, all of that, the pack out. It's really, yeah, I mean, every set's going to be different. And I could tell you right now, um, like new seasons, we have even fewer touch points of DSD than what Circle K had. So think every 2 to 4 weeks for some of those big guys. So that's, I mean, that's everybody has to run their business. I understand, we have a certain volume, but it makes it challenging for stores. So then we're almost forced to, we're either holding space in the back room or we need to increase the holding power in the floor. And in some cases, it's both. You have to have more holding power on the floor and some back stock in the back. But those are, it's interesting the challenges that we all have in different ways like that.
The industry.
What I was thinking about this earlier and I was just curious, like, how often did you get store staff that would change the planograms? And not necessarily your business unit, like your regional person, but like a store staff, either a store manager or a grocery manager, the store clerk, whatever, how often would they change the schematics to either expand facings or cut items in that maybe weren't in the cold case and, they thought that it deserved it? Like, what does that look like for you? And is that okay?
say it happens, right? But sometimes it happens for very justifiable reasons. So you have service issues and not mentioning any names, but XYZ vendor that supplies juice can't supply their juice. And that's the one juice we have. Well, they're going to cut that space down and they're going to expand something else because what can you do? You don't just want to have a hole in the planogram forever. And that's then on that vendor to come up with a service plan to get their product back in
Yeah.
stock. The thing I
I
saw
think
more than oh, sorry, Robert, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I think that's a great example of being proactive and, you know, uh, absolutely owning, your store and, like, being, uh, just a really good steward of the business
Yeah.
versus, I just have a different idea than what the category manager is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a great example.
I'm sure it happens. I've seen some things end up in sets and I wonder where they came from, but you know, I wouldn't say it's the rule, right? It's the exception. The thing I did see more of is unauthorized secondary equipment in stores.
Mm,
So uh, we have authorized secondary coolers, and then not mentioning any names, but XYZ vendor comes in and they drop off a cooler or a warm rack. And then all of a sudden the store is very crowded. And that makes it difficult from a planning perspective because we're trying to plan for all the equipment that we want to do or the local category manager wants to do. And there's all this other stuff in the store. And the store manager might want it. They say it's selling really well, but what is the data that backs that up? And so I do think that there needs to be more control, and I would say for suppliers to be very cognizant to make sure when you're dropping off equipment that it is authorized or that
yeah.
you have a license to hunt to go place equipment too,
Yeah, I mean, that's just gonna hurt the relationship
for
between the
sure.
vendor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think a lot of it comes back to some early conversations is on the contract piece, right? And so there's a lot of cases where, to Holly's point, I've been on both sides where, like, I've been the store manager that did exactly that, and you go, gosh, they just can't bring it in. And then you go, what are these corporate guys doing? And then I've been on the other side of it as the corporate guy. Um, there's always communication, right? So, especially to the team that's out here, please just don't go start cutting items in. I don't think that's what any three of us are trying to say,
yeah,
but have the conversation so that way the store director can trickle that up because in certain instances, yeah, there may be some brand, right? There may be Robert's Cola that sells great in, the middle of Portland that Holly never knew about until
it
somebody
does.
came and said, hey, by the way, you should really look at Robert's Cola. And you go, oh, cool. This makes sense for the store here, right? Like, perfect. But then there's the agreements that go into it, and you know what the facings are, and you know that it hasn't gone through. So that way, nobody can come back, right? XYZ vendor can't come back to you and say, hey, we were supposed to have 60%. Now we're at 50% of space. What happened? And you're going, well, here's my planogram. It shows it. And they take a picture and they say, well, here's what's in your store today.
Yeah.
Right. So communication
Uh,
is really what it
this
comes
doesn't
down
work.
to and just have the conversation. And that was the beauty part of having, all those division, sales managers that were out there to represent and really own their region to say this is why we believe in it and so this is why you should believe in it too.
Yeah. Yeah, you triggered me with that picture thing. Like, we're all local within Portland, so a lot of the vendors I just had a good relationship with, like, texting, and so, sometimes, though, I get a picture like, "Oh, did you see this vendor did this?" And I'm like, oh, it's heartbreaking. Like, especially in our sets, they're so small, we build it, with intention. We have those, not necessarily contracts on our end, but we have, the agreement that, I've put these into the set and now they're gone.
Well, it's still a
So,
plan,
yeah.
right? You're still
Yeah. Yeah,
expecting
for
a
sure.
hurdle rate, you're still expecting this, you're still expecting all these other things, and right, best laid plans is based on execution. So
Yeah.
yep.
Um, well, we're about 50 minutes in. Anybody in the audience have any questions? I dropped in a question. If you have, we've kind of covered a few sections, but if you have any specific questions, we'll take some time to answer. Otherwise, we could probably wrap it up. If you don't, we'll just give it a couple minutes and see. Um, Matt, do you guys or Holly, do you guys have any last thoughts either? That
Only thought
just
this has been awesome. By the way, I could chat with you guys all day, and probably
there's so much
even
to cover.
continue. Yeah, there really is so much to cover. I go back to that picture that you showed on there, Robert, and it's been a LinkedIn message of yours over and over again. Is where's the emails? Because emails should be like the biggest chunk of that pie
Yeah,
that's in there, right?
yeah.
And
I'll have to
communication.
go
So
edit
you
it.
have to go edit that one.
Email should just be in the center of it, like
Yes, absolutely.
because an email about every one of those pieces too.
Yeah, I think too, the other thing, I mean, there's so many things you do in that role, but also internally selling. That is a huge aspect of the job. You know, whether it's you want to partner with the food team on a food bundle, whether you want to do, for me, a fuel promotion. Well, what does the fuel team have to say about that? What are their priorities? The earnings call is coming up. We got to get the speaker notes in for the earnings call.
Yeah.
You know, we have to show how the beverage business is doing in this geography of the country. There's so many things that go on in the background in addition to what you have on that slide that I'd say that the buyer's life is very, very busy. It's such a fun job. It's a great job. I loved it. But the thing I would say for sales reps is don't be offended if people don't email you back. Don't take it personally. I worked with so many vendors, big and small, and tried to give them as much of my time as I could. But at the end of the day, there's only so much time that you have too. So just keep trying, be respectful. Don't bug them, don't piss them off, by emailing 40 times a day. But also, do give them the room to understand that they're busy too.
Yeah, and I'll add in too is the I would say the buying role, especially over the last 10 years, has been really fluid, right? There's a lot of buyers that have moved categories or they've moved companies. As a brand, right, you should know that business and category as much as you can and really be an advocate, obviously for your brand, but go and help, right? I mean, my first day as a buyer, I made mistakes too, and I was learning, and I had to rely on the vendor community to go and be that data expert, right? I had to go do one-on-ones with the biggest brands that there were because I needed to know everything that I could, and then you pick things up along the way. But I think that's a big part of it is as you go and have those meetings, you know, the best question I ever asked, well, what are you looking for? Oh, cool. Well, this is what I'm looking for. Well, I can solve that. This is a great conversation already. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need you to do the pitch. Like, let's talk. Like, how do we go find solutions? Not, this is my brand and this is what it is. And this is how I'm going to go do this. And this is why I should be on there. And you're going, all right, I've been here for a day. Like, I don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh man. I had it was funny. My very first meeting, just really quick going off of that, it's very similar. Like I go in and my boss who hired me, he was like, "Oh, go ahead and start it. I'll be up in a minute." And I'm up there and I kind of remember this vaguely, but my coworker noticed that it had been like 15 minutes and the boss hadn't gone up and he's like, "Hey, are you going to go up, check on him?" It's like the very first meeting. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And then he's like, he'll be fine. And so my coworker came up and helped finish that off, like that meeting with me. And like, obviously grateful for that. But, it's just, yeah, you go in and when you're new, you can't, you're not an expert. You're not going to be able to speak to what had previously happened, all of that stuff. So, I think I got this question of before too, like, do people try to take advantage of that? Some probably do. They try to leverage it in some way, but I think for the most part, people are just understanding. Like they just want to build a good relationship, and that's really what will get you the long term partnership. Versus, if I figure out that you were just screwing with me and like you got one over on me, like that's not going to go well later.
The other piece of advice I have is just to network with as many people as you know. So whether it's folks from the marketing team, the loyalty team, it doesn't really matter. Just get to know them, have the conversation. So not every question has to be funneled up to the buyer unless they want every question to be funneled up to them, obviously. But being able to go and network to say, hey, I have a question on marketing, I can reach out to this person and know as many people as you can within that organization because I've seen so much buyer turnover too that you never know who is going to be the next person in that seat. And so building those relationships, having those relationships for a longer term, definitely I've seen be very successful for folks that do that too.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, we're coming up on time. I think we are going to call it. Um, Thank you guys for joining,
Of
and
course.
really glad to have you on here and have the different representation. It was awesome conversation. So, yeah, we'll have to pick it up again some point.
Yeah, we'll see each other at upcoming